Okay, so basically, the conservation is saving the environment. Conservation means that you are trying to save the environment. Conservation means that you are trying to take some steps that are essential for saving the organisms. These are essential for saving the organisms. And when we focus on this topic, we are going to look at three focus points. What are sustainable sources and how can they be managed? The meaning of a sustainable source of energy is that uh, a type of energy, um, that we can use again and again. A type of energy that we basically a type of energy that we basically are going to um, we basically are going to uh, use again, and it would not reduce in its amount. It would not reduce in its amount. It would not be you can say mm, decreasing. It would not be decreasing. It would not be depleting. That is another way of saying that it is not going to deplete. So you can say non-depleting. These resources are non-depleting. Okay. Then why do organisms become endangered or extinct, and how are endangered species conserved or saved? So let's have a look at it. How can we see that? How can what measures we can take for these kind of things? All right, moving on. Conservation of forests. Now, right now, you are in between. One is like for and one is supplement. Now, conservation of forest is first topic of the supplement. Obviously, we need to go through it. But overall, remember, overall, the thing that you are about to observe is going to be very common. Like when you see the conservation of forests and then you see the conservation of fish stock, everything is related to the same headings. Like education, closed seasons, protected areas. Over here, you have education, protected areas, legal quotas, replanting. Everything is almost, by and large, everything is same. So that is why, first of all, what is the problem with the forests? We are depleting the forests with a very much higher rate. Why we are depleting? It's quite an obvious. Hold on a second. Okay, so basically the conservation, now it is very simple. It is very obvious to know that the conservation is the need of conservation is the time when when basically you are um, when basically you have depleted all your natural resources, or you are depleting the natural resources. You are depleting the natural resources, and they have been depleted already. Depleted already to the extent that if we exceed that rate of depletion, then it is going to be too late. What is depletion of forests? We are deforesting. We are uprooting the trees for lumber, for timber, for different kinds of furniture purposes, everything. So we are uprooting the trees. Even we are uprooting the trees because we are going to make more areas for the land, for like for shelter, for building some home areas. So for that purpose, first thing that is necessary is education, educating the people, and not only the education but also coming up with some sort of stats. You can say that process of cutting down the trees also damages the surrounding trees. Dragging the trees out of the forest also creates more damage. Through education, the men carrying out tree falling are learning alternative ways to reduce wastage and select species of trees to be felled. Like we can identify the species which should be uprooted and which should not be uprooted. So that basically is the whole thing behind the education. And you must know that in Costa Rica, the programs are designed to make farmer aware of the importance. And right now, you know that they have almost eliminated the uprooting entirely in Brazil. In Brazil, they have almost eliminated, and they are earning from their tourism industry. Moving on to the protected areas. Protected areas are those areas in which some very precious species, very rare species are present, and where the people are prohibited, the laws are there, the people are prohibited, the hunters, the tree cutters, they are prohibited to read, prohibited to go there, and they basically are not allowed. They basically are not allowed to cut those trees particularly. These are called as tree preservation orders, TPOs. Any damage being done to the protected trees. Coming to the legal quotas, obviously this is something lawful that you are basically allowing the people that have you have this much number of trees you can cut annually or monthly or daily, not more than that. So you can make your product based on the timber or lumber, um, by just uprooting this much of the trees and not more than that. That is the meaning of legal quotas. And legal quotas is one of those things that is going to be present in every heading afterwards. Okay, after this there is replanting, or in other words it is also called as reforestation. Reforestation is something when we have uprooted a lot of trees, we try to replace that uprooting by replanting the trees, you can say, belonging to the same species. This is our first priority. That if we want to reverse the damage that we have done, first of all, we must know that we need to replace the already uprooted trees with the same species. That is one of the most important tasks. So it is really important that we should know that the trees must be replanted in their previous locations and the same species. But if the previous location is not available, then a new location should be found. And if you cannot find more of those same trees, then you should be finding the better trees. Some trees are, you must know that some trees have devastating effects. Some trees have devastating effects. They have devastating effects in the sense that they can just destroy the soil storage of water. They destroy the soil storage of water. They destroy the soil's water holding capacity. They suck up so much water that it becomes scarce inside the soil. So then we have like the aim was to plant 73 million new trees, and being done try to recover large areas. Then in India 2016 to plant 50 million trees in just 24 hours. um, Country's effort to reforest 12% of its land by 2030. Pakistan has its billion tree goal in 2017. The hill of a province in the country's northwestern region were planted saplings as the part. This was one of the most precious project that was done there in the hills of northern areas during 2017. The reign of the reign of whom you already know. Then China is planning to restore 69.2 million acres of forest lands. Um Now, waste paper can be pulped and used again. This is one of the way of replanting. Like, why don't you use the based paper. The problem is the bark is one of the most important protective layer outside a tree. So we need the bark to make the papers. So we must be saving trees by rebuilding the papers. Then different things are there. Conservation of fish stocks. The problem is the fish stock. We in the mind of a common person, the ocean diversity is not even a thing. I have even experienced this thing. Like the fishermen, I'm not talking about the fishermen. Obviously, the fishermen are even more illiterate in the sense that they do know that how they capture the fish and how much fish they capture. But the problem of a common person is that they don't, he doesn't even know what is the significance of the marine biodiversity. What is the significance of the marine food chain? Because it is not in front of our eyes. That is the real problem. So, most of the time, the people often come up with the examples of the land, the forests, the land that is like uh, in front of their eyes, and they make the laws for it. Now, it is very important to know that the fish stocks are also being conserved first thing by education. Research institute involved has an active education program. Local fishermen have overexploited fish stocks. They have destroyed habitats by using dynamite and cyanide to catch fish. Kill all the organisms in the area. Whole coral reefs have been destroyed. This is one of the disastrous thing that you can read in this whole book. Disastrous thing. Why am I emphasizing on it? Because remember that the the thing is that when the people start um, putting the poison into something to get their purposes, they are basically destroying the whole biodiversity. So they needed to be educated in closed seasons. This is one of the questions that I have been seeing in like quite one or two maybe past paper, that what are the benefits of closed seasons. Obviously, you can let the fish grow to their reproductive age. This is one of the best benefit. Why? See, this is one of the best benefits because you can hunt the fish. Okay, you can do fishing, but don't do fishing above out like before a certain age. Don't do fishing before a certain age. Why? Because can you just give me a few seconds? My laptop right now is heating a bit too much. I don't know why it's been heated to a dangerous level.
Is it like just flat on the table?
It is like what?
Is it just flat on the table? Because that usually causes it to heat up.
Like basically, I usually put it on the table with the glass, but it never used to get this much warm. The body doesn't get to warm this much. Right now, I have put it on the book so that the heat can be moved. But I don't know what's happening, and I have a line appearing in the middle of my screen. That maybe is because of the heat. I don't know why. Anyways, so um, we were in the closed seasons. It would give a lot of chance to um, to let the fish reach to the breeding areas. This is one of the most common habits of the fish. They have breeding seasons in which they don't lay eggs or don't let their eggs hatch in the colder areas. They get to the warm waters and they lay their eggs and wait for them to hatch, something like that. So there is basically the thing that many times, when you are at a particular location trying to hunt the fish, that is because they are there. Those fish are there because they came to spawn. They came to reproduce. They came to breed. But the problem is that you did not allow them, or you have started hunting them. Consequently, you have very, you can say, drastically damaging the population of the fish. So the closed seasons are related to those areas which are especially the breeding points. Next, the protected areas. The protected areas are specifically those which are going to be um, mm, some areas where some specific type of fish may be present, spawning or breeding grounds, something like that. You can say that these are the protected areas. You cannot go there. Some clearly defined geographical spaces are there, managed to achieve the long-term conservation, so you cannot go there. Control of net types and mesh size. Now, this is something very important. The fishermen use the net because the fishing that we do is not done by the fishermen. The fishing that we do with the fishing rod, uh, that that kind of fishing is not something the fishermen can afford. They use the net, or if the fishermen have a lot of money, they have a lot of they have the liberty of spending a lot. They can easily purchase a ship and they can use the trawls. I guess you know what are the trawls. So the trawls basically are the large nets that they drop into the water. They drop into the water, and then they start the ship and start moving in a particular direction. Now the fish in that area would automatically be trapped into that trawl. That is the trawl. Now, uh, what is the most important part here? First of all, the trawl is one of the most dangerous thing because it uproots many plants, it destroys the soil, it destroys everything. It destroys everything. Second thing, second thing is that trawls used to be the fishermen or the companies used to make those trawls which are you can say which have very small mesh size. Now the smallest fish would be trapped in it. Suppose there's a fish. Suppose I guess I was yes, I was teaching to a student of Edexcel yesterday, and we were doing a past paper question, and there was a question that there is a fish called as um, uh, there's a fish called as herring. The herring. Herring is a fish that that lives up to 8 years, and it starts reproducing from the age of 2 and keeps on reproducing until the age of 8. Now, what did these trawlers do? The trawlers basically started hunting the the herring fish at the age of 2 or maybe 3. Now, why were they successful? They got succeeded because their mesh size was so small that the 2 year or 3 year old fish, which was very small, used to get into their mesh. But now the legal size of the mesh is very strictly followed, and they are not allowed to trap those herrings which just entered into the reproductive age. What is the benefit of it? You can hunt them when they are at the age of 6 or 5. You can hunt them, but see, when you can when you let them live for 5 or 6 years, it basically means that you are allowing them to reproduce enough, and their diversity would be increasing. That is the whole point about the mesh size. That let them live, let them reproduce, then you can eat them. You can eat them. So basically, that is the point. That is the point. Okay. So they are destructive. They fishing nets. They can also destroy the seabed. I have already told you. A gill net is a wall of netting that hangs in the water column with floats to hold in the position. Fish. There's a yes. There's a gill net. I have seen that as well. There is a whole large, a large net that is hanged into the water, and when it is hanged into the water, basically it can trap the fishes. But obviously there is a legal mesh size for that as well. Coming to the legal quota especially is obviously the same thing that we studied in the forest, in the deforestation, that you are not allowed to do the fishing in above this number. So you can say help to manage fish stock and protect species that were becoming endangered. Set for each species of fish taken commercially for the size of fish. Reach breeding age and maintain increase their population. Quotas are not universally quotas are not universally popular because fishermen who catch too many fish or species of fish not included in their quota are not allowed to sell them. Fishermen who catch too many fish or species of fish not included in their quota are not allowed to sell them. The surplus fish are thrown back, but they're already dead. So that was basically another problem. Like obviously, when you have thrown a net, now you cannot make it. You cannot keep it to a limited number that how many fish would be entering into your mesh, into your net. Now, when you take them out, when you start counting them, obviously they would be already dead. The time when you are about to throw them back into the water, they would be already dead. Something very obvious. Okay, monitoring. Now, this is something very important. Hold on a sec. So monitoring is just simply monitoring the waters which are not allowed to, which in which the fishermen or poachers or these kind of people are not allowed to enter, and there are very high fines there, and they are very like you can say there is a sentence of many years in jail to if you are found in those areas, or if you are found fishing in those areas, there is a very big penalty for that. Okay. Endangering species and causing their extinction, that basically is very simple to understand, that you are performing the hunting. Overhunting is the problem. You are performing the deforestation, leading to the habitat destruction, and consequently leading to the loss of the breeding sites of many organisms, loss of the shelter sites of many organisms, loss of the preying site for many organisms, and ultimately ending up um, uh, uh, destroying the whole food chains and food webs. I told you that basically when we are destroying different kinds of you can say when we are hunting them, we are basically destroying the whole food chain. And food chain, when a food chain is disturbed, I mentioned in a previous lesson with an example that even hunting or destroying, causing the destruction of one organism in the food chain would result in the disturbance of the whole food web. Not only one food chain, but the whole food web would be the problem. Species become extinct in the course of evolution. After all, the fossil remains of plants and animals represent organisms. There have been periods of mass extinction, but the problem is the mass extinction is not our problem. Our problem is that the mass extinction have been hastened. It has been quickened by the human, by the destructive the destructive workings or destructive activities of the human. Like you can say, today, as a result of human activity, the rate of extinction has gone up by at least 10 times and possibly as much as 1,000 times. Suggests that world is losing one species every day, and within 20 years at least 25% of all forms of wildlife could become extinct. Okay, then okay, that is the problem. Sometimes these are only the estimates. The reliable evidences are difficult to find. But the next thing is a classic example in the colonization of the Pacific island by the Polynesians. They hunted and ate the large bird species and introduced rats, ate the eggs and of ground nesting ground nesting species. Their goats and cattle destroy plant species through grazing and trampling. Of about 1,000 plant species, 85% have been lost since they were first discovered. Simple is that you colonized an area and your introduced rats and different animals have destroyed the whole ecosystem. That is.
I think this happened. I think like in the human context, like when um, the Europeans went to America, they took
Mhm,
smallpox with them. So
mhm, mhm,
basically, the Native Americans didn't have the immunity for that. So the
mhm.
population rate went down because they all died from monkeypox.
Yeah, it did happen. It also happened like due to China.
Yeah,
Like you can imagine what happened during Corona, obviously. Okay, this may be an extreme, but these sort of changes are happening all over the world. WWF Worldwide Fund Nature estimated that only 3,000 tiger species remain in the wild. Now, you know what's the problem there? Like, okay, what is the you can one can think that what's the problem? Okay, if the only 3,000 are left, save them. The problem is not only losing the animals, you are losing the genetic variety. The higher the number of organisms doesn't mean that they have different genes. This is very strange to say. Remember, if you destroy the nature, if you destroy the natural diversity of the organisms, now what would happen? What would happen? That these organisms are like they are very less in number. Now you, according to the legal quotas and protected areas, what do? You save them. You save them from getting hunted. Okay, fine. But the problem is there were 50,000 individuals of a species in a particular area. Now, when you took the step and started saving them, there are only 5,000 species, meaning that 95% of them are already finished. This is not the problem. This is not the real problem. You could bring them back into the human territory. You can save them. The problem is you have lost 95% of the genetic variety in that species. Now, no matter how many times you make them breed, The problem is that you cannot bring that much genetic variety in such a less time, because the same genes are getting mixed again and again and again and again and again. And this has happened, this basically in the terminology of the evolution, this is called as bottleneck effect. That you were wide, but you are now in a particular part of the bottle. You cannot go forward or backward because you are in the loop. You are in a loop now. So this is basically the problem right now that happened to the people, that happened to the tiger or the cheetahs. This drastically happened to the cheetahs. Less than 5% of their number in 1900. So hunted for their skins and their bones. That was the problem. Some species of animals are introduced by accident. One example happened in Great Lakes in Canada and USA. The lakes were artificially linked with shipping canals to provide transport links. However, sea lampreys found their ways into the lakes through the new waterways. No natural predators in the lakes, and fed on trout by sticking to them with their circular mouth and boring into their flesh. Fisheries in lakes harvested 7 million kilograms of trout annually before lampreys entered. Afterwards, the harvest dropped to 136,000 kilograms. You can just imagine when the and it is all happened accidentally. No one was determined to do that. They just opened their own ways to enter into certain area, and lampreys, the one of the most important parasitic fish, found its way to enter into those waters, causing the destruction of the ecosystem, which reduced the yield of the trout from 7 million to 136,000 only, meaning 0.136 million. You can just imagine the difference by dividing them. So climate change is also responsible, obviously. Global warming is causing oceans to warm up. Now the problem is the global warming is not like, you should know that water is not that easy to like warm up. Water is not basically warming up that much. The fish, the fishing area, the fish are not that much getting affected, but there is a problem with the coral reefs. In 1994, you can see in the third line, coral colonies in the Indian Ocean were seen to eject food-producing algae that live inside them. As the coral rely on algae, if they lose them, they die. The reefs became bleached when the area surveyed again in 2005. 4 fish species appear to be extinct. 6 other species are reduced to the point of being endangered. Species like Atlantic cod are becoming endangered at possible risk of extinction. Cod survive in cold winter. As seawater warms up, the cod migrate north. The population of microscopic plankton that cod rely on further down the food chain are also sensitive to temperature change. Phytoplankton, you can assume that they are on the most vital part of the food chain, the water bodies. And when the water temperature changes, they die. Simply die. They cannot sustain it. Now, conservation of different species which you have already destroyed, what you can do. Using laws to protect the habitat, using wardens to protect the habitat, reducing or controlling public access to the habitat, controlling factors like water drainage and grazing. The Indian government has set up many national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. What is a sanctuaries? Sanctuaries is a self-made ground where we bring the organisms which are about to extinct and we let them breed, trying to make them breed in an environment very close to their natural environment. Bioreserves to conserve wildlife and their habitats. Other initiatives include projects to protect endangered species like tigers, elephants, crocodiles, rhinos, vultures, and turtles. Rights. Conservation or international trade in endangered species gives protection to about 5,800 animals and 30,000 plants by persuading government to restrict or ban trade in endangered species. Very important because time the people with a lot of wealth has this particular kind of habit to purchase the prohibited things, then operates on a global scale and works in over 100 countries, raises money for conservation projects in various parts of the world. IWC, International Whaling Commission, was set up to try and avoid extinction of whales. This is one of the most sad part in this whole situation. The whales got extinct, got endangered so quickly that no one could ever imagine. Education again has the same role: captive breeding and reintroductions. Captive breeding is what? Captive breeding is like you limit a space where no person either for the either with the what do we say, with the intention of hunting or maybe with only the intention of recreation are not allowed to visit. They are not allowed to visit. They are just like you can say simply they are the captive areas, the areas which are in the captivity, and they you cannot let them um, you cannot let the people go there getting the you cannot let the people go there so that you can let them live in peace and breed in peace. Okay, next is in India, success has been achieved with lion-tailed macaque monkey, no longer on the list of 25 most endangered species of primates in the world. That was a problem. This one is I guess, lion-tailed macaque monkey. White-rumped vultures have been released in Nepal after captive breeding program. The sea eagles, red kites, and ostriches have been introduced from areas where they are plentiful to areas where they had died out. So we have reintroduced them. Introduced from areas. So seed banks, this is another very important thing for those plants which can get extincted really quickly. We can place some seed banks for them, collecting their seeds from the fruits, storing them in very particular at very particular temperature. The Millennium Seed Bank partnership in Kew Botanical Garden in London, global project involving 95 partner countries. Then 25% of the world plant species is in storage about 20, by 2020. So they have a lot of plant species there, seeds of plant species stored. Conservation programs are there. What are those conservation programs? You can say that these conservation programs are basically maintaining and increasing diversity. Some 25,000 plant species are threatened with extinction. So what we are doing, gene banks have been set up to preserve a wide range of plants, but these banks are at risk of accident, disease, and human error. So we have put the gene banks. We have set up the gene banks. Why we needed to set up the gene banks? Remember, we need to set up the gene banks because these gene banks are typical. These gene banks are typically a source of storage. These are the source of storage of your genes. No matter how many times the species are destroyed, now you have conserved their genes, which was the most important part, which I told you a few minutes ago, that basically the genes are getting lost. You may get the number of species back, you may reintroduce them back to the wild, back into the wild, but the real problem is you are losing the genes. You are losing the genes, and that is why they ended up having the gene banks. Then reducing extinction. Conservation programs makes very effort to prevent extinction. Its genes are lost forever. Okay, we humans have no right to wipe out species forever. We will also deprive ourselves of the beauty and diversity of species. So many of our present day drugs are derived from plants, quinine and aspirin, and there may be more sources to be discovered in the future. The genes in these endangered species may be used for genetic modification. So everything is important. You should know that everything is important here, meaning that you must be reducing extinction, protecting vulnerable ecosystems. This is another important part. Sometimes you have a whole ecosystem at stake because of some environmental or climatic condition. So you have a whole ecosystem at stake. For that purpose, what do? Some species of plant need very special conditions to grow successfully. For instance, wetland habitats. This is very important. What are wetlands? Wetlands are basically the breeding grounds. Uh, need very special conditions. These are wetlands are the breeding grounds basically for those birds which do the migration. Let's say there are many wetlands in Pakistan here for the Russian birds to come here in the extreme, for the Siberian birds to come here in the extreme cold season. They breed here, they rear their young ones, and they go back. Wetland being considered is Mekong Delta in Vietnam. Some areas are under threat through drainage and conservation to agricultural land. So also forests associated with the wetlands there, where water, bird, roost and nest. The same thing I said. There are many wetlands here in Pakistan where the birds come, and you know what? The hunters go in the same season there, try to hunt them. Obviously, we do have legal quotas here, we do have laws, but obviously, many times the things get out of hand. Okay. We have different organizations. Some are global, for example, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, the Natural Nature Conservancy, Oceana, and Conservation International. Others are country based or small scale. Most countries have national parks and nature reserves to protect rare habitats. This is very important to protect rare habitats because rare habitats contain rare organisms. Maintaining ecosystem functions. What are the functions of ecosystem? The relations between the organisms, the recycling of resources. For example, some lakes in Thailand contain red-tailed catfish as the top predator. Overfishing the catfish can result in small carnivore species of fish like jungle perch to increase in number. They eat smaller herbivore fish and crustaceans. If the jungle perch eat most of the small fish population, there are no herbivores to control algal growth, and boom, there would be a very big explosion of algal growth called as algal bloom. So you must keep the predators there. Remember, the presence of predator is, you can say, I read a word somewhere. The world is green because of carnivores. Because of carnivores. Why? Because the carnivores control the population of the herbivores, and until they are controlled, you can protect the greenery of the world. Seabird and bed droppings were called guano. Guano is very rich in nitrogen compounds and phosphate, so it makes a valuable fertilizer. And you should know that there is a bat whose droppings are turned into coffee. In the early 1900s, Peru and South Africa both developed guano industries based on marine birds. However, overfishing and around their coastline reduced fish stocks and removed the food the seabird relied on. So you have disturbed the ecosystem and food webs, affecting ecosystems on a large scale because of the growth in the population. Our population is also destroying them. We need the drugs, we need the food, we need the crops, we need to manufacture fuel. So these things are seriously destroying everything. Okay, clearing of forests, deforestation, I have already told you. Currently, the benefit of producing fuel from plant material is open to question. Okay, now use of AI and IVF. AI is not artificial intelligence, it is artificial insemination. What does it mean? It means that we inseminate different females based upon, we inseminate different females based upon artificial insemination by bringing the semen from some other captive ground. Suppose that you have only 2,000 individuals left for a species. Only 2,000 individuals. Now you know that And obviously, let's say one captive ground is in USA in one state, one captive ground is in another state, one captive ground is in UK, one captive ground is in Spain, etc., etc. Now what do you need to do? You need to keep on increasing and mixing the genetic material. One way is to bring them together. Rather than doing this, carry their semens, carry the semens of males in special bottles, taking them to different regions, mixing the genes, artificially inseminating the females. And in vitro fertilization means taking the sperm and egg from male and female and fertilizing them inside the labs. Involves collecting sperm sample from the male animal, artificially introducing them into female reproductive system. The sperm can be used immediately or be frozen and stored. Being able to store the sample also means that the sperm can be sent to other centers. Captive breeding programs are being run. Being able to transport frozen sperm between geographically isolated population can also greatly increase the genetic diversity. I have already said that. In vitro means in glass. The fertilization is allowed to take place in laboratory. It is just like the test tube babies. In humans, this technique may be used where it is not possible to repair blocked oviducts. In captive breeding programs, we use it for endangered monkeys, apes, and other large mammals. Sometimes females will not breed naturally. It happens under pressure in the captive grounds, in the captivating grounds. The females feel under pressure, so they do not determine to they are not determined to um, mate. So that is why sometimes we need to take the eggs out of them, and sometimes for we need to give them fertility drugs. Um, the ovaries, okay, the ova are then collected by laparoscopy. They are sucked up in a fine tube inserted through the abdominal wall. Ova are then mixed with the male seminal fluid and washed under the microscope to see if cell division takes place. Risk to a species of decreasing population size. Basically, if the population size decreases, you have um, a smaller population would be affected because the genetic variation in gene pool would be reduced. A simple understanding of it. Okay, I think where is the sustainable energy resources? Let's see the syllabus. Describe which is produced rapidly as it removed from the environment. Hold on, I guess it is in the very beginning then. Um, can be maintained with careful management. This involves replanting them with new seedlings. Here it is. Fishermen operating when the fish stocks are being reduced. Okay, hold on. Oh, okay. Hold on. I guess just Astef Pro project. No, this is not fisheries. There's in a closed greenhouse environment. Plants are grown in mineral wood. Okay, we can find this topic in the other book. Some resources can be conserved and managed sustainably, limited to forest and fish stocks. Uh, how forest can be conserved, how fish stock can be conserved, we have studied that. Become endangered, or is it climate change, habitat destruction, hunting, over harvesting, pollution, and introduced species. Monitoring and protecting, education, captive breeding, seed banks, maintaining or increasing biodiversity, reducing extinctions, protecting vulnerable ecosystem, use of artificial insemination, and in vitro. Explain the risk to a species if its population size decreases. Yes, reducing. Okay, almost completed. Sustainable energy resources topic is I cannot find here. Let's consult the other books. Okay, let me see the list over here. Um, Energy flow effects, conservation is present here as well. Pollution. Let's see, conservation. One that produced rapidly as it removed from the environment so that it does not. Some resources like forest and fish stocks can be maintained with careful management. Replanting land with the new seedlings as mature trees are cut down and controlling the activities of fishermen operating fish. The STF Pro project is an example of the sustainable tomato fish protection. Okay, now this basically is just saying that this is sustainable tomato and fish production. Basically, just like you say that okay, this is useful. The explanation is not required. So it is only this paragraph would cover our topic. Okay, so captive breeding, overfishing, conservation efforts worldwide, recycling water, spread of diseases, sea water, sanitation. This everything is out of syllabus. Okay, so we are done with it. Moving on to the last chapter. Um, which one did you cover? You did cover the. Did you cover the habitat destruction?
Yeah,
So only pollution is left, right?
yeah.
Okay, pollution. Pollution, what is it? It's just the addition of something in the environment that is not required. Even a useful substance can become a pollutant sometimes when it is not required in the when it is not required at a particular time. So pollutant is just the addition of something that is not required, not wanted. Okay, so untreated sewage and excess fertilizers on the ecosystem, what is going to happen there? Diseases like typhoid and cholera are caused by certain bacteria. They get into human intestines. Feces passed by people suffering from these diseases will contain harmful bacteria. Basically, there are many diseases like they have mentioned typhoid and cholera, but the hepatitis also gets spread by the water. That is also a bigger problem. Hepatitis sometimes gets very nasty. Okay, human waste is broken down by bacteria and made harmless. However, the breakdown products include phosphates and nitrates. When the water from the sewage treatment is discharged into the rivers, it contains large quantity of phosphates and nitrate, which allow microscopic. Now, remember another very important thing that nitrate, nitrates are limiting factors for uh, water body, for lakes and ponds. What happens when you keep on adding the nitrates into the water bodies, these nitrates would cause a population explosion. Excess nitrates and phosphate cause the eutrophication, and eutrophication is a phenomena where it means true nutrition means that this is what they require, and algae grow at a very high rate, leading to leading to algae grow at a very high rate, leading to algal bloom, which means changing color, odor, and taste of the water. So grow very rapidly. This happens, and the eutrophication occurs. Fertilizers, nitrogen, and phosphates from the farmlands, sewage escapes into the water. What do we call this phenomenon? This phenomenon is called as leaching. This phenomena is called as leaching. Okay, this may result in a serious oxygen shortage in water. You know what happens that when you have sewage in water, The sewage gets decomposed by the bacteria, and bacteria start growing very rapidly. Fertilizers, they get decomposed by bacteria, and it causes bacterial population explosion, leading to a high usage of oxygen in water, consequently depriving all others from oxygen, depriving others from oxygen. So, death of aquatic animals would occur. Effects of sewage and fertilizer on aquatic ecosystem, I have already told you. Untreated sewage, when it goes there, detergent from manufacturing and washing processes, arable farming and factory farming, if, they become available for algae to absorb these. The plants need these nutrients to grow. The faster growth would occur. Though through shortage of light because of overcrowding, more plants die. Now imagine that this is the situation of water. Even the Let's suppose that the empty areas are also being covered. Let's suppose that these empty areas are also being covered by the algae. What's going to happen? Any plant beneath this would die because of the light shortage. And they would be hunted so much. These are basically, what are these? These are representing the planktons, and which are the primary producers of the primary means basic producers of the aquatic ecosystems or water ecosystems. They would be eaten, increasing the amount of animals there, leading to a population explosion of animals, ultimately leading to lack of oxygen. Okay, so look at this. Nitrates or phosphates from raw sewage, fertilizer, or other sources enter water system. Algae absorb the nutrients, grow rapidly. Algae form a blanket on the surface of water, blocking light. Algae die without light. Bacteria decompose dead algae using up the oxygen. Animals in the water die through lack of oxygen. This thing is just as simple as that. There is no rocket science in it. I have already told you about the eutrophication. This whole thing is so much related that you would not even know that when to talk about eutrophication and when not. This is all up to your judgment. Now, how the fertilizers reach into the water bodies, we know either because they are soluble in water, so they get into the rainwater, enter into the rivers and lakes, and then uh, get into the rivers and lakes, and then you can say the industrial effluents, like obviously the detergents or some other kinds of wastes enter, and they can cause the eutrophication. Biochemical oxygen demand. This is something that is basically the measure of pollution. It means the water health. The water health is inversely proportional to the biological oxygen demand. If the BOD of the water is higher, it means the water is healthier to live. If the BOD is lower, it means water is inhabitable. Sorry, non-inhabitable. So reduce eutrophication by using detergent with less phosphate. Agricultural fertilizers do not dissolve so easily. Animal wastes on the land instead of letting them reach rivers. Like, don't let them reach rivers. Excess nitrogen and phosphate allow microscopic plants to grow rapidly, but there are not enough microscopic animals to eat the surplus plants. So the microscopic plants die and are broken down by bacteria which use up oxygen. Okay, discarded plastics are there. Plastic isn't in there. Environment is there. Oh God. Greenhouse effect and climate change. Okay, what is a greenhouse effect, by the way?
It's called the atmospheric gases working together to balance the um how do you say it?
No, let me tell you. The greenhouse effect is basically when many farmers and many nurseries and plant nurseries, they uh, they sow the seeds inside a plastic house, and when they sow them, the purpose of the plastic sheet house is to keep the heat inside, and this is achieved when the when the water sorry when the sunlight enters, when the sunlight enters through the plastic into the greenhouse, um, they get trapped there. Why? Because the plastic is can be penetrated by the sunlight, until the sunlight is of short wavelength. But when they penetrate through the glass or plastic, their wavelengths become longer. It means the waves that have entered cannot exit now because they entered through shorter wavelengths. Now they cannot leave since they have become longer. The same thing happens there when the sunlight reaches to the earth. It it collides with the ground, and then it reflects back, but now it's a longer wavelength. If you have a thick blanket of gases around the earth, it means they would not be able to escape. They would, if you have a thick blanket of gases. Now, what are those gases basically that can trap the those longer wavelength waves? Carbon dioxide, vapors, methane. These are the gases that can accumulate, and you can simply say that increased amount of carbon dioxide can lead you to it. Less photosynthesis means that actually uh, you are actually not recycling the carbon dioxide that much. Even you are not recycling you are not recycling the photosynthesis, and you are not recycling the carbon dioxide, and even more producing the carbon dioxide. Increasing number of animals, including humans, they all respire. And what is the meaning of respiration? Releasing carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is increasing, blocking the longer wavelengths, as working as a blanket, leading to leading to warming of earth, and overall global warming. Methane also acts as a greenhouse gas. Then uh, its effects on global warming are much greater than the carbon dioxide. It is produced by the decay of organic matter in anaerobic conditions. In wet rice fields and in the stomachs of the animals, such as cattle and termites, they are produced. Then they melt polar ice caps, change weather conditions, reducing rate of rainfall, cause the extinction of some species that cannot survive in raised temperature. Simple as that. If you look back at the carbon cycle, obviously you can see the recycling of carbon dioxide. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have been burning fossil fuels obtained from coal and petroleum and releasing extra CO2 into the atmosphere. As a result, the concentration of carbon dioxide has increased from 0.029 to 0.039 since 1860. It is likely to go on increasing as we burn more and more fossil fuels. According to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration NOAA data, CO2 level rose to 407.4 ppm in any point in 2018. NOAA states that carbon dioxide levels today are higher than at any point at least the past 800,000 years. Highest carbon dioxide levels are right now. Not possible to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that production of CO2 and other greenhouse gases is causing a rise in Earth's temperature. Global warming. Prediction that global warming depend on computer models, but these depend on very complex and uncertain interaction of variables. There are predictions, but those are like obviously not always confirmed. Changes in climate might increase cloud cover. This might reduce the heat reaching the Earth from the sun. Oceanic plankton absorb a lot of CO2. Will the rate of absorption increase, or will a warmer ocean absorb less the gas? You can see this graph. Average annual goal temperature, global temperature, average annual global temperature. These are the years from 1880 to 2020, and from here CO2 concentration parts per million or ppm. You can see that it is constantly rising, especially from uh, since 1960. It is constantly on the rise. The only thing that is left is plastic. So I am now tired due to continuous talking.